Hello, everybody, and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me, I have a Jer.
Hello.
An Alex.
I'm Moist.
And a Ben.
Technically, I don't exist.
Reminder, the North 100 is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. Let's start off with our opening segment, the best card that you're not playing, up to date. Wheeler, tell me a little bit about a secret spice we might not have heard of.
So this is a card that I have been ranched with, I have ranched people with, and I have witnessed additional ranching. The card is called Sunscourge Champion. So it's 2 and a white for a 2/3 human wizard. When the champion ETBs, so enters the battlefield, you gain life equal to its power. And then it also has Eternalize. So Eternalize is an activated ability where you pay, for this card, 2 white, and you discard a card from your hand. You exile Sunscourge Champion from your graveyard. You then create a token that's a copy of it, except this time it's a 4/4 black zombie human wizard without a mana cost. And you can only Eternalize as a sorcery. So it comes down as a 3 mana 2/3 that gains 2 life, or additional life if you have any anthems, but usually just 2 life. And then they kill it. And you're like, okay, that's fine. A red deck killed my creature that gained me some life. And then, without having to worry about this card getting countered, you can pay 4 and bring it back from the graveyard and gain 4 life. So this is a beating against aggressive decks. It's also a surprisingly relevant nuisance against blue decks. Eternalize is an ability that pops up more in this format than you'd expect.
Really?
Just because there's, I mean, when you think of a bunch of keywords that have popped up for just single sets, so they're in a set, we never see them again.
Yeah, energy. You're just like,
Well,
Sorry.
little parasitic.
Yeah.
But like, I can't even think of Awaken, like the Battle for Zendikar turn lands into creatures, etc. The amount of cards that see play for any given keyword, it's like 1, maybe 2, and then for this, there's like 5. There's like a cycle of them. There's a green 2-drop, a red 2-drop that is like one of the best.
Okay, the
red
2-drop's amazing.
Yeah. You got Champion of Wits. You get this card, and all of them are quite powerful. Again, not being able to counter a large creature that you have already gotten value from, even if like the 2/3 isn't something to phone home about, it still provides a body against blue decks. And it still provides a road bump against the red decks, the green decks.
The 3rd toughness is pretty big against the red decks as well.
I don't think I've ever noticed this card before.
No, definitely.
This really is a best card
Yeah.
for playing.
Welcome to vintage legal format where we're advertising 3 mana 2/3s.
It's funny you mentioned vintage. One of the formats where this card has seen very minimal play. Not as much anymore, but it's quite good with Standstill. Again, really cementing how powerful Eternalize is. You can get away with playing something that isn't the best up front, but still a role player as long as the Eternalize is going to be relevant.
Also reasonable value with Survival of the Fittest.
What deck are you putting this in?
I have seen it have success in mono white, black white, and Esper. Especially when it's paired with cards like, well, for black white, Liliana the Veil. Or let's say you accidentally, or you dredge it over with Liliana the Last Hope. Or you cast a Chart of Course and you discard it. Whatever it may be, right? It's obviously that extra juice goose if it gets discarded and then you bring it back without ever having to play it. But if you have to play it, it's not the end of the world.
Can I talk about the elephant in the room, which is the additional pitch a card?
Yeah, like how big is having to lose an extra card to this though? Like that's not a small investment.
But it's still just a 1-for-1.
Yes.
Against a blue deck, you're discarding a card that can potentially get countered and is likely worse than a 4/4 that gains you 4.
It also can play into certain play patterns that white creature-based decks will have, where it comes with Armageddons, where decks will, once they hit a certain amount of mana, they will start holding lands, because if they Armageddon, they'll be able to rebuild quicker. And then you'll get to a point where you're like, well, do I really need this 3rd land or this 2nd utility land in my hand?
Or it's just like, look down, look up. Now your piker has become an obstinate Baloth.
Exactly. Or like decks that have removal that's not relevant in every matchup. You get rid of it. Yeah. Card's great.
That's very interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Get one now.
Cheers to that, Ben.
Like,
Oh, it's hot out there in the Amonkhet Desert.
Don't look at me. I didn't know anything about this bit.
All right, friends. Well, let's move on to the main part of today's episode. Welcome to the Magic Core Set 2020 set review.
They keep printing cards.
Smooth as butter.
Yeah, I don't know if I should call this M20 or Core 2020 or whatever, so welcome to whatever that was. So reminder about our set reviews. These are Highlander focused. This is not exhaustive. We're only going to talk about the cards that we think are relevant or maybe not relevant to the format, and we'll hear the rationale behind that. We had very positive feedback for sort of a longer form one, so hang out with that. And rather than committing to saying that we're going to make it oh so far in an episode and being wrong, as I always am, we're going to see how far we get today. Yes, Alex?
I got a dumb question.
Go on.
How come the set number is always a year ahead of the year it is?
I think it's because that's when it's legal and standard.
Something
Oh,
about
back me up on
cars.
that.
What?
Yeah, cars.
Yeah, cars.
Like the sports video games are
Or
the
it was a
same.
year ahead too, yeah.
Yeah, but why?
Cars.
Beach?
It makes it
Hold
sound
on.
newer.
You're in my car.
Yeah, all right.
Am I having a stroke?
Here in my car.
I
And
don't
I'm
think we
gaining
have
some life.
We don't have a good answer for you. We're all speculating that it's
Okay.
there's a lot of industries that typically start the year before for the season.
Because you wouldn't want to have Core Set 2020 come out in June of 2020 because there's only 6 months left to play it, is what people would think.
I'm going to go
It-
ahead and believe my headcanon will be that it's a Sibboleth.
It's well,
Okay.
it's a mental thing too, right? Where if you are in 20, like if this came out and this was called 2019, and you're
playing
in
from cards in the
2020
past.
and you're playing with it, you feel, oh, these cards are old. Why would I want to buy these? These are old cards.
Anyways, let's move on. We're going to talk about the new cards. They're exciting. They're
kinda-
M20.
I kind of want to talk about how funny it'd be if they introduced cars to Magic, like not even vehicles.
We already have vehicles.
No, just plain
Ben, please. Ben, please.
Okay.
All right, we're going to start off with the new Ajani. Ajani, Strength of the Pride, 4 mana planeswalker, comes with 5 loyalty, 2 white. +1 ability, you gain life equal to the number of creatures you control, plus the number of planeswalkers you control. -2 ability, create a 2/2 white cat soldier token named Ajani's Pride Mate. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And 0 ability, if you have at least 15 more life than your starting life total, exile Ajani and each artifact and creature your opponent controls. Alex, let's start with you. What do you think about this new Ajani?
What an interesting set of abilities. I always like stuff that combos with itself. I mean, like, I'm obviously thinking about this in Soul Sisters, or Junk Sisters or whatever, but, like, this is actually just kind of cool. The third ability is really, really strange as Planeswalker abilities go. I just want to get that right out there. It self-destructs.
Yeah.
Push the big red button.
The big white button.
Ajani always has this really weird kit. Like, trying to figure out what the design space for Ajani is as a planeswalker. You're like, all right, what does it do? Well, sometimes it anthems your creatures. It gains you life, and it creates cats. And it's like, what a weird space to try and design a
This
planeswalker in.
card seems like it will get out of control real fast. Like, you make it 2/2, which is like a pretty decent body as far as like defending yourself as a planeswalker is, and then it just starts getting bigger.
And if you're playing it in a Soul Sisters deck, it often comes in as a 3/3 or
Yeah,
a 4/4.
because it'll enter play, and there'll be a triggered ability off one of your Soul Sisters and automatically gain life, which is kind of cool.
Like, I mean, not that that's difficult to do this, but you know, if I was a red player and I saw this across the table, I would start sweating bullets. I'd be like, oh, good.
Would we play it in anything outside of Soul Sisters?
Might try it in Mardu life gain mid range. Been meaning to go back to that deck
Word?
soon.
All right. Next up, we have Apostle of Purifying Light. Apostle is a 2/1 for 1 and a white, human cleric, has protection from black, and for 2 generic, exile target card from a graveyard. Alex, what do you think about this?
They said they weren't going to do protection anymore.
It's back.
That was a dirty lie, and I'm stoked about it.
It's because hexproof from color wasn't very well received.
Yeah, I mean, it was not super well worded, but this card's sweet. It's a human and a cleric. little something for the clerics deck. But like a piker with protection from black is pretty decent. But and you've got this ability. I compare it like very favorably to there's a zombie that
Withered
did,
Wretch.
That's the one, Withered Wretch. It's like Withered Wretch, only like better.
I think it's interesting because white, correct me if I'm wrong here, but other than rest in peace, does white often have incidental graveyard removal?
No, it does. Like Mardu Woe Reaper.
Samurai the Pale Curtain.
Beck and Apparition.
Shout out to 2003 Ben.
And wait, am I totally off on this? Because I thought black was typically the color that gave you access to graveyard hate.
Black and
Mostly.
green.
Black and green mostly, and then white with a little bit of a
White
splash
is
on
like
that.
tertiary.
Yeah.
So I guess we just named a couple of other cards that already have this effect. Would we be playing this over something like Samurai of the Pale Curtain?
You typically want to play these effects alongside each other.
Yeah.
You really want to nail it, drive it home.
Redundancy.
The fact that this ranch is a reanimator style deck or a graveyard deck, usually reanimator, like
Or
just
even lands.
blue black.
Even lands. This hits
Sure.
if you got Crucible online.
Black-based aggressive decks as well.
Yeah.
Just accidentally get hosed by this card.
Protection attached to a card with relevant abilities is a lot stronger than it looks.
Because one of the things the black aggressive decks look to leverage in the creature matchups is that a lot of their threats are recursive. So not only does this block almost every creature in their deck, it also eliminates the recursive threats.
I could see this being good in Death and Taxes, in White Weenie, and like Green White.
You stick this against Reanimator, and they're just staring at their fatal push, and then you don't push. You don't put any mana into casting things at sorcery speed. You instead just EOT Idiot Bird and Hushwing Griff, and just eat away the graveyard.
All right, let's move on to our next card. This is something that I'm sure Wheeler was very excited about. Let's talk about Brought Back. White instant. Choose up to 2 target permanent cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn, and then return them to the battlefield tapped. Wheeler.
So this isn't as good as a lot of people have made it.
Does that hurt you to say?
Be. No, it's because I know I'm going to kill people with this card.
Well, the tapped is a big deal, right?
Tapped is super relevant for a lot of the very easy kind of loops that you find with Second Sunrise and Face Reward, but there are ways to get around it. Eggs can kill through a Manglehorn. Lion's Eye Diamond doesn't need to tap to use its ability. And then there's just a bunch of weird shenanigans that you can do, maybe with Amulet of Vigor, maybe with Scrap Trawler. The strength for the Sunrise and Face Reward, it comes from, again, the cards coming into play untapped and being able to then loop it with Codex Shredder or whatever it may be that you're doing. There's a couple of neat things that I don't want to show my hand just yet, but you can put this under an Isochron Scepter. That's all I want to mention, is you can put this under an Isochron Scepter. There's something here.
Yeah.
These things take a little while to figure out. It's not as obvious like, oh, this loop, this loop, this loop.
Yeah.
There are loops there, but it's just it's figuring out whether or not it's worth exploring.
Well, now, speaking of worth exploring, I've almost been thinking about this in a white-based lands deck.
We need to talk after this.
You got the same idea?
I have a list for you.
Oh, baby. Yeah, because, I mean, for the benefit of the viewers at home, I'm just thinking of the value of slow rolling like a wasteland and a fetch land. And then you're like, all right, strip your land, go fetch for something, brought back, do it again next turn or something like that. And then, I mean, that's the same sort of thing you get off of, what's that old 3 mana 3/2 for 1, a green and a white that has Revolt?
Renegade Rallier.
Like Renegade Rallier. Sometimes you could strip mine somebody, play Renegade Rallier, bring back strip mine them again. They're down 2 lands, you have a 3/2.
Jeez.
And it also negates the downside on things like Knight of the Reliquary and Crop Rotation, and even gives you some advantage from those. Ben, do you think you'd ever play this in like a more fair deck?
You're saying lands isn't fair?
No, Serge, I'm not.
It seems like maybe
Like here we
Like,
go,
like
white
the
weenie.
upside of just like getting rolling your first fetch land, playing a second fetch land, and ramping 2 is like insane. But that's like very unlikely to happen.
You can do some cool things with this in Pattern Rector and Sandy B. I don't know how fair on the fair scale it is.
Well, if you're playing like Death and Taxes, for example, are you playing this as Wrath Protection?
I don't.
Or to trade combat.
I think your Wrath Protection in D&T is like Thalia.
It's just killing them.
It's just like
It's either killing them or just keeping them off of mana for Wrath.
Alright.
And I think there are better cards to play,
Yeah.
like Unbreakable Formation.
Sure.
this one's interesting though.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the last card that we were excited about in white. It's interesting. There's some colors we didn't want to talk too much about. I'd like to talk about Starfield Mystic. 2 mana 2/2 human cleric. Again, those very relevant creature types. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 generic, less to cast. Whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Starfield Mystic.
Oh, I know the deck this goes into, Serge. It's Enchantress.
Enchantment Triss.
Enchantment.
Now, I don't actually...
Sorry.
I'm wondering if there's enough effects like this now that there might be almost like a Boggles list.
There is a Boggles list, but this doesn't go in it. It doesn't have hexproof.
I mean, Jared took that, but I have some very exciting news for
All right,
you. But
hit me
I
up.
want you to get to I want you to talk about this card, and I want you to get to a point where
then-
you say the magic word, and the streamers fall.
Is the
no.
magic word bestow?
And then everything, and anyways, so at Magic Fest Seattle, there was a player playing what they described as Sanctum Stompy.
Yeah, that's what I'm...
Yeah.
Yeah, you play like a green-white, fairly aggressive deck, but you have all the bestow things, and you can also ramp off of things like Gaia's Cradle and Sanctum.
You just play, so it sounds, for lack of better terms, miserable. Because when you look at the cards that you are playing, the quality
bad.
is very...
They're bad.
They're bad. Or it's very vulnerable.
You can play some okay ones, yeah.
However, upon closer inspection to this list, which if you're curious about it, I'll try to dredge it up, or you can find it on the Canadian Highlander Discord.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the medium decks.
Yeah.
In that your card quality is either not great, or it's wow, this card's really big, but I mean it's just gonna get swordsed or whatever. But like that's fine because you're skipping the curve so much through Wild Growths, Moxen,
But I also think
Sarah's Sanctum.
there's enough of these effects now.
Yeah.
Like there's at least 3, if not 4 of these, because Theros gave you quite a few.
You got Herald of the Pantheon.
Yeah.
You have this one, Hero of Iroas.
There's the one from Dominaria, the 3 mana 2/2 with first strike that auras and equipment are cheaper.
Danitha, my queen.
Danitha, yeah, like there's starting to be enough effects like this that a bestow deck, and that's what I meant when I
gotta see
said
this.
Boggles, was not specifically Boggles, but like an aura deck, like an aggressive based
called
white.
Voltron.
Bogles.
What, Boggles, Ben?
I mean, I don't mean in terms of the hexproof kill them deck, but in terms of like the suit 'em up, like the suit 'em up style of Boros equipment package, but with auras.
Right.
Voltron.
Voltron.
It's called Voltron.
Aura Voltron. How you doing?
I'm so... Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I'm fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine.
So that's what I'm thinking about. I don't know how relevant the second ability is of it making it grow, but I think it has a home specifically in that deck.
Well, you trigger that once and it's good.
Yeah.
You get a Rancor loop going on?
Yeah.
Alright.
Rancor, Oratog, bear. Let's move on to blue. Let's start with our first card here. Brineborn? Brinehorn.
Brineborn.
Brineborn Cutthroat.
I was born in the brine. You merely inherited it.
2 mana, 2/1 Merfolk Pirate for 1 and a blue, has flash, and whenever you cast a spell during your opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Jared, what do you think of this card?
I think it's solid. It's a reasonable flash threat. The like lack of evasion is a little worrying, but it does have an opportunity to get quite big. Tempo decks really like having 2 mana threats as opposed to 3 mana threats. In those decks, the difference is massive. It also goes in the Merfolk deck and is welcome there for sure, because they have Lords plus disruption to grow it. So, yeah. reasonable card.
All right. Next up, we have Cerulean Drake. 2 mana 1/1 that makes Wheeler sigh. Has
No,
flying.
he loves this card.
That was a good sigh. Not like a like
good sigh? No, that was a...
That's an orgasm.
Is that not a sigh?
He
That's
was
not a
getting
sigh.
ready to cry tears of joy.
Serge, the only sighing I do is SAI, comma, MASTERTHOPTER.
1/1 with flying, protection in red, and sacrifice it, counter target spell that targets you. Wheeler, tell me about the Drake.
So there's a card from Homelands called Sea Sprite
Yeah, wait.
that is 1 in a blue for a 1/1 flying protection from red, albeit I believe it's a fairy as well. Oh, I don't know if this Homelands art will give you the appropriate card or creature type. Oh, Masters Edition coming in clutch.
All right.
Anyways, shout outs to Susan Van Camp for that art. Anyways, this is a card that I have signed up for multiple events. Not even just one, like, sure, I'll play this card. Multiple
No one
events.
can catch what won't be caught, Wheeler.
You know, Kakra has always said this, and I've agreed. So
Classic
having
Kakra.
pro red attached to an evasive body for flying men or skies, whatever the variants might be, is something that the deck has been desperate for in the past, that you would play Sea Sprite. And then as we've received more powerful, more streamlined flying threats, those cards kind of just got thrown away. We accepted that this match is bad and will always be bad. And making concessions to our card quality, which feels weird in a deck full of 1 mana 1/1s, is something we don't have to, like, why it's not worth making.
Well, like now you're getting 2 mana 2/1s.
Yes, yeah. But now look at this. This Cerulean Drake being a flying pro-red creature is something that, well, we've played in the past, but being able to counter a spell that targets you, surprisingly relevant. I don't know if I auto-slam this card, but it's definitely a card that has enough relevant text on it that I'd be willing to play it. Especially if you're on a spread that has... now that the deck is jamming up to 4 different curiosity effects, depending on how keen you're feeling.
How
This
curious.
How keen your senses.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Uh-huh.
It's or even slapping a GT from your point spread, right? Like this is how you beat these decks, and it's not the worst. Outside of the red match, it has a relevant ability attached to it.
No, my hidden circle second right is not looking very good now.
All right. Next up, we have Drawn from Dreams. This is a 4 mana sorcery for 2 and a blue and a blue. Look at the top 7 cards from your library. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Hey, wait a minute.
Jer,
We've seen this text before.
No, it's random.
but on an instant.
Yeah, this isn't Dig Through Time. It's certainly worse. But it's still reasonable, I think. Dig Through Time is an insanely powerful effect. I don't think control decks will want this as much as some of the slower big mana combo decks. Like I could see High Tide playing this. I could see Academy playing this potentially, depending on your flavor of Academy. But it's one of the better 4 mana draw spells available.
Yeah, this is like 4
Es-
mana super
especially-
impulse.
Especially if you're a deck that's not as interested in casting a Time Twister effect to refill your opponent's hand as well, and you want to leverage some card advantage. Like you're worried about burn opponent drawing lethal burn or blue opponent drawing counter spells. Then
Hey, so is Mu Yanling replacing Jace now?
God,
let's hope.
I hope so.
Yeah.
God.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
All right. Next up, Flood of Tears. Flood of Tears is a 6 mana sorcery, 4 blue. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. If you return 4 or more non-token permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent from your hand onto the battlefield.
Sorry, Serge. What was the mana cost again?
4 blue.
For tears?
A blue. Wheeler.
So, this is not Upheaval, obviously. But that's fine. Upheaval's kind of a busted magic card. There's a card from Oath of the Gatewatch called Crush of Tentacles that offers a similar return everything, and then assuming
Get a
you've
threat.
done a thing, The Crusher Tentacles being Surge.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going? Which is easy for decks that, say, have Mana Rocks or Mana Dorks or Wild Growths, whatever it may be.
Cantrips.
Yeah, cantrips. You get to make an octopus. For this one, you need to have the 4 permanents, which you got Mana Rocks, you got Mana Dorks, you got Wild Growths, you got Sylvan Library, Sensei's Top. Just cheap things that decks that would play Upheaval Light would already do. And then you have the upside of being able to bounce everything, put in a Primeval Titan, bounce everything, put in a
Paradoxic.
Omniscience. Which is all. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. This is all I really want to do with this card.
Are you thinking of this as like show and tell?
Yes.
Like 6 mana show and tell, but one-sided?
Yeah, well, kinda. Yeah, it's the defensive upheaval is something that you don't want to do, but you have to do occasionally, and it feels bad. But, you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to survive. So if I have to play this as a way to stop my mid-rangey hate bear threat opponent from killing me, I'm going to do it. And then if I get to use it as a functional show and tell, I'm also going to do it.
Cool. All right, well then let's move on to the person listed in the flavor text. I have wept such a torrent as the scour the land clean. Let's talk about Mu Yanling, Sky Dancer.
What?
Another 3 mana planeswalker. So for 1 and a blue, you get 2 loyalty, plus 2 ability until your next turn. Up to 1 target creature gets -2, -0, and loses flying. -3, create a 4/4 blue elemental bird creature with flying. And -8, you get an emblem with islands you control, have tap, draw a card. Jer.
This card is so good. Like, and it's blue. Yeah, for Highlander, this is like the literal dream. This is everything Jace Bellerin wishes it was, and oh so much more.
Poor Jace.
It +2s, which is almost a defensive ability in itself, regardless of what the text actually says. But the text is actually good and is more defensive. The -3 will win you the game very, very quickly.
Woof.
And the -8, if you ever lose after getting an emblem, like, call me and tell me how it happened. My number is 555.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Right.
This card is absurd, and I plan to play it in many decks.
Having played this card already, can confirm, extremely good. One thing that came up that I don't know if it had been the history of these kind of effects just planted in my head, I thought this elemental was legendary. Until I got to a point where I made multiple. And then I was just like, oh, no, it's not.
There was a point where I thought it was legendary and had the illusion ability. and I still thought this card was insane. And then I read it and I'm like, oh, it's not. Oh,
Like-
oh my God.
Like, it's cards like that, you know, it's not to do a little aside, but Mox Sapphire doesn't get a lot of love, at least locally in our format. Like, people will say it's simultaneously the worst Mox and the best Mox.
Sure.
Because I mean, when you're playing blue, you rather go to other point spreads.
Yeah.
But cards like this, boy, it makes me want to sleeve up a Sapphire. Like, dropping this on turn 2.
I mean, this goes in that tempo
How do you
deck I've been
ever
playing,
lose?
right?
Yeah,
It's unbelievable. All right, I know this is kind of cute and typically not what we do, but like, this card makes me want to play Doubling Season.
No.
Oh, come on! Let me have this dream. You get 2 4/4s.
You can already ult it by the time Doubling Season comes into play.
Serge, let me tell you about a format called Commander.
I feel sick.
Let me have this. All right, whatever.
No,
Let's.
No.
you will not have any of it.
Let's talk about a very exciting role player in a lot of decks. Let's talk about Spectral Sailor. So this was great. During the pre-release, Graham was like, "Is this the greatest flying man ever printed?" And Jared from off camera goes, "No," but it's still very good. So single blue gets you a 1/1 flash flying spirit pirate that has the activated ability 3 and a blue, draw a card. Alex, we haven't had you talk about a lot of blue cards. Get in here.
What do you do with a stone dead sailor? What do you do with a stone? It's a flying man. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if there's anything that needs to be said about this other than it goes in Flying Men,
I mean,
and it's really good.
this card could just be a 1-mana 1/1 flying, and it'd be like, yeah, get in,
Yeah.
get in, loser. We're
I
going
will say,
shopping.
I've had a very long distance side eye to a Spirits deck, which is probably pretty bad right now. But the
There's a couple of
more
Spirit
these they print.
Yeah, Innistrad had a blue-white Spirit Lord.
That was one of the best lords
Drogswell
ever
Captain,
printed.
yeah. I want to comment that there's going to be a lot of people looking at this card and thinking you're never going to activate that draw a card. And you know what? You're not wrong for thinking that. But as someone that's played a lot of Flying Men with under 24 lands in my deck, you will get to 4. You will get to 4 regularly. And then you're going to start activating this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up we have Tail's End. 2 mana instant for 1 and a blue. Counter target activated ability, triggered ability, or legendary spell. And they didn't even source who this quote is from. When you are gone, will anyone remember your story? Jer, as our resident control master, what do you think of Tail's End? Expert master? Yeah, whatever.
Well, this isn't so much a control card as is like a tempo card and a pretty ham tempo card at that. Like this is like if we got the Stifle tier list, TM, this is probably like the 7th best one.
7th? I was going to say 4.
Whoa, Serge.
I'm shocked that you're that low on this card.
You don't think drawing a card is better than the ability to counter a legendary spell?
Drawing a card of what? Off bind? Or
Stifle
what?
Bird.
Bind, interdict.
Oh, the
nibble.
bird? Oh, I don't. I mean, it's Stifle, Bird, and then maybe this. The countering a legendary spell is huge. This isn't a Stifle. The Stifle is that's the additional text.
I don't think there's enough legendary spells to play this as counter a legendary spell.
It's
All
2
Planeswalkers
mana
now.
counter every Planeswalker, good creature, Paradox Engine.
Oh.
Yeah, every Planeswalker is
Saga.
now legendary.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm underrating it. Like, I still think it's good. I like Stifles more than most people, but I still think tacking draw a card onto a Stifle is better than the ability to counter a legendary spell, but I might be wrong.
Do we compare this to Negate when you think of the number of cards you hit? No? Okay.
Not even close.
Okay. I'm just worth throwing
Counters
out there.
GT.
Counters GT.
Counters GT.
So does negate.
Okay.
We're not comparing it to Negate.
I figured it was worth throwing out. Go
I'll
ahead,
tell you
Alex.
what. It seems like if you had the Stifle and the counter legendary on separate cards, they would be real bad. But together?
Yeah, I definitely think this card is playable. Like, I've played decks with more than 7 Stifles before.
Wow!
Sometimes you don't want your opponent to have lands and you want to play blue. There's only so many ways you can do that.
I mean, fair enough. Okay, let's move on to our last blue card of the day, Winged Words. 3 mana sorcery for 2 and a blue. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a creature with flying, so it doesn't have the same ability as Thought Cast, so it doesn't get progressively cheaper for each creature with flying, and has the words draw 2 cards. Wheeler.
Guys, I just love my birds so much. I just got all warm and fuzzy thinking about all my friendly little birds. You play Chart, of course. You'll probably play this. Like, again, you will, if you don't have a flying creature in play, you should not be spending your turn casting a draw spell anyways. Yeah. You should probably be protecting yourself with whatever permission or creature disruption that you have. And then when you really do need to refuel, which is one of the ways that Flying Men, or more so Flying Men than like the purely aggressive Skies variants, are looking to do, is you make up for the fact that your deck is filled with 1 mana 1/1s by casting Ancestral Recall, by casting a Chart, of course, by bricking their mana or whatever. So I like that in Flying Men. I don't know. I mean, don't play this in anything other than that.
All right. Let's move on to black. And starting off, we have the Bloodthirsty Aerialist. 3 mana 2/3 flying vampire rogue. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Bloodthirsty Aerialist. Alex.
Does this go in Junk Sisters?
Yeah, is the payload, is the reward? I mean, we talk about Ajani Pridemate, but Ajani Pridemate is a lot easier to cast. Like black in a deck that's base white, splashing.
I'm just
black?
comparing this really unfavorably to
Trana.
Well, okay, no.
Wow.
Leaving out Drana, Vampire Nighthawk,
Yeah.
which
I
think this card has a much higher ceiling than Vampire Nighthawk. Like, in Junk Sisters, the ability to get this to like 6 power 2 turns after you cast it is like not that difficult, and then it's like killing your opponent very quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
or just like bricking your opponent's
evasion
board.
on a grow creature is pretty great. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's worth trying.
Are you on Triple Moxon for Junk Sisters? Is that like the go-to spread?
I don't know, because there's like not a lot of. I can't think of any like. Well, I mean, I think you have to play GTA in your spread.
Oh yeah,
Like that's just
that seems good.
correct.
What about Double Moxon? I'm still sold on this. I feel like this deck, if you have access to Dorks and Moxon, this card becomes totally fine to me. If not, this card looks real
Even
bad.
just like if you're maxing out on the Soul Sisters, I think it's fine.
It combos with GTA.
I mean, yes, it's a creature that attacks or blocks.
Well, you can
No,
also
whenever
gain
you
life,
gain life.
and it gets bigger.
No, I know that, but
Okay, never mind.
like the only creature that doesn't combo with GTA is that Hat Rack from Dissension.
They printed a hat rack.
Yeah, it's a Hat Rack. It's like a 3-mana 5/5 graft, can't attack or block. So I don't like that with GTA, but the Hat Rack, woo!
He's got Grandpa Simpson coming and taking a piece of crap and putting it on his head.
So as we move through the black cards, I would like to ask the room if vampires as a tribal deck is now getting closer, because there's a couple of very interesting cards here. I think one of the bigger things it's missing is lords, but is it getting enough role players?
Honestly, that was gonna when we get to Sauron.
Okay, all right.
Okay, well-
We'll save that for later.
got
As
a
I said,
bit.
we'll keep that in mind as we move on. Next up, we have Dread Presence. 4 mana 3/3 Nightmare for 3 and a black. Whenever a swamp enters the battlefield under your control, choose one. You may draw a card and lose a life, or Dread Presence deals 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life. I'm going to throw this one to me. I got 2 words for you, friends. Black, green, scape shift.
It's 3 words. But
There were hundreds of ways you could have gone with that bit. Didn't think that was the one you were gonna do.
okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think this card is sweet. You're right, that was 3 words.
Did you seriously not?
I often think of the color words as just like the color and then the word, and then, but when I said it out
Could have
loud,
gone
Wait, what?
Golgari Scape Shift.
all right, I got 2 words. for you.
Scape shift.
That's honestly what I thought he was gonna do.
We are not editing around this at all. I'm leaving it all in.
Glad of it. There are
Scape
2
shift
words.
is a
Golg,
what word?
Ari scape shift.
I think this card is rad.
It's
and a lot of people already are making deck techs about how even in standard, green black scape shift is a thing right now. You know, and I think it does. It's tough. I mean, you're paying 4 mana for 3/3, and that's not great. But I think it has enough. What's wrong?
that whole sentence
It's great,
is
but
just
then
so
I wanna-
good.
It's great,
Look,
but it's not good.
it's-
Hold on.
It's tough.
Let me
4
finish.
mana for 3.
Because the effect is very powerful, and if all you look at is the line of text, ignoring the cost and the body, you can often get lost in how powerful that effect is, while realizing where it fits in your curve of it. That is a serious downside.
It's the ability that causes this to trigger as well, right? You cast this card, it resolves. You have priority.
Yeah,
you,
they can't
you
respond
make
to
your
the first
game
land
action,
play,
so
yeah.
you at least get something out of it, assuming you have a swamp,
Yeah,
which is good.
yeah,
I'd
But-
play this in big black as well.
yeah.
God, I'm just thinking, like, what's that enchantment? Like, was it Prismatic Omen?
Yep.
Yep.
You don't even need Prismatic Omen. Urborg.
Tomb of Yawgmoth?
No, but just like play both, because like, correct me if I'm wrong. Prismatic Omen means you play your fetch and you drain them for 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you fetch.
Yeah.
That's-
I mean, that's how some old.
Urborg is the same though, right?
Yeah, Urborg is the exact same because the fetch line
All
is also
lands
a
are
swamp.
swamps.
Yeah.
Ben.
This card, Fast Bond, Bounce Land.
Yeah.
Oh, they're dead.
Yeah.
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 Well, if you have Urborg.
Yeah.
Bork.
Yeah, I mean, this is another card that creates a number of infinite loops.
Also,
because,
it looks awesome.
yeah, the art is pretty rad. So,
I can see the stand, but not the user.
Wow.
100%, I'm going to be playing the heck out of this card, and I like it a lot. It's actually 1 mana cheaper than a lot of the 5 mana legendaries I've typically had to rely on for win cons and stuff like this. Like, it's cheaper than the Gitrog. It's cheaper than Tatiova. I'm probably playing those as well, but it's...
It's cheaper than Obnixilis.
Tatiova.
3 mana 5/5 for 3 a green.
No,
and
the 5 mana 3/3.
Three
Oh,
blue,
If
green.
it was the 3 mana 5/5,
Ben-
everyone would be
sorry.
playing
Five-
this girl.
Druid.
5 mana 3/3. Whenever you play a land, or whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, which is even better because this also double triggers off of a fetch land, you gain a life and draw a card.
Is it still thick if it's really long?
I don't want to answer this question on camera.
Dread Presence is rad. Moving on.
Great.
Embodiment of Agonies. 3 mana 0/0. For 1 black demon. Has flying and death touch. When it enters the battlefield, Embodiment of Agonies enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each different mana cost among non-land cards in your graveyard. Jared, what do you think of this card?
I actually think this card is really, really good and has the potential to be absolutely massive. I think a bunch of people are sleeping on this card. I think it's really easy to get it to a 3/3, which is already quite a good rate. And the ability, if you top deck it in a longer game, for it to just be like a 10/10 is also just not, you don't need to do anything. And if you do go into like a self-mill strategy with recursion, you can just like, this can be unearthed. This can be, there's a bunch of unearthed analogous cards. You can reanimate this, only paying 3 life, and potentially get upwards of a 10/10
So
with flying and death touch.
Yeah, sorry, 2 things with this card. One, I think people read this and think it's like Tarmogoyf where it counts card types or something, even though that's not what it says. Like, your potential to have more boxes ticked on this is way higher than it is with something like Goyf. Also, there's 3 men trying to get out of his chest.
I've been there.
Yeah,
This card's
Alien.
really good for Delve decks, right? Like the
Yeah.
Grixis decks. Like I'm looking at this. I've been kind of chewing on this for a bit. And aside from the mid-range, the black mid-range decks that could take advantage of having another good 3-drop or whatever it may be, like jamming this on turn 5 or 6 as a 3-mana threat that comes in as like a 5/5 or a 6/6. It feels not, I don't want to call it Tombstalker or anything like that because I haven't gotten to play with the card.
Sure.
But it feels very much like a low-cost card that as your turns go long in like a blue-based control deck, you're just going to jam this as like a 7/7 with mana to protect it.
Cool.
Does it count 0?
Yep.
So, land?
Every
No,
No,
specifically
non-land.
says non-land.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But like Ancestral Visions, Crashing Footfalls
Okay.
are 0s.
And just like random stuff like Manamorphose will, like if you're playing the Grixis Delve deck, like Manamorphose
Ooh.
gets it bigger. Just awkward
Every time.
mana, like Shadow of Doubt.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
Next up, Knight of the Ebon Legion. 1 mana 1/2 Vampire Knight. Has an activated ability. 2 and a black. Knight of gets +3/+3 and gains death touch until end of turn. And at the beginning of your end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It just keeps going. Alex, what do you think of this card?
Aggressive.
Yeah.
It's a really good 1-drop that I'm definitely going to play in stuff like Black Mold. It's a vampire, so that's maybe like edging us closer, but it's like there's just tons of text on here. Like, your floor is, it's a 1/2 for 1, which is not terribly exciting, but you can incidentally trigger this to make it bigger. And if that wasn't enough, it's just going to beat your opponent to death all by itself.
Would we like this card better if it was a 1 mana 2/1?
Yes.
yes.
Well, yes, but then it would be stupid.
Oh, I just wonder if you're counting on it to grow, or if you just play because it's just another good...
You're counting on it to grow, but the fact that it also has the activated ability to grow itself, and that assuming you connect, because it's not easy to block a 4/5 death touch profitably.
You can
it's
also,
probably going to grow from that.
Like, this is maybe a little corner case, but there's no limit on the number of times you can activate that ability.
Correct. Well, yeah. All right, next up, Legion's End. 2 mana sorcery for 1 and a black. Exile target creature an opponent controls with converted mana cost 2 or less, and all other creatures that player controls with the same name as that creature. Then, that player reveals their hand and exiles all cards with that name from their hand and graveyard. Who do we have up for that one? Wheeler, what do you think of this card?
Boy. So this card it's probably one of the cards that has been brought up to me the most.
Really?
Ultimately, to make a long story short, I feel like this will just fall into a long line of removal spells that pop up. People are like, oh, this is cool. I get to play this in XYZ. And then turns out, nope, you're still just going to play Fatal Push and like go for the throat or whatever. It does provide, exiling a card is quite nice. Being able to hit tokens is relevant for black as well.
That seems the most relevant use, though, is hitting a bunch of tokens with the same name.
Yeah, but also just being able to deal with pesky threats, Tarmogoyfs, whatever it may
Voice
be.
of Resurgence.
Yeah, getting information isn't, realistically, the whole duplicate thing isn't that relevant unless you're against Rat Colony.
Yeah, okay, then you just completely branch
I was gonna say,
into
I
death.
have seen you play Rat Colony. in Highlander.
And but like getting information's not the worst. You're not playing it for that, but there's enough going on in this card that I think it's at least worth trying out, even if my gut just tells me I'm going to cut it after like a league or
Just
whatever.
feels so bad if your like medium opponent goes like land mana crypt 3-drop and you're staring
Yeah.
at this removal spell and you're like,
The CMC cost 2 or less is such a big wall. It's a huge wall.
The format has evolved mostly due to how the game has progressed to be very much about the board, where even control opponents, right, they're going to be fighting on the board, and the best way to do that is with powerful, resilient threats, which you'll often find starting at 3 mana. And so this not being able to hit your Anafenzas, even stuff like Kitchen Finks, whatever it may be, is ultimately or Delve Threats too, is ultimately what makes me think that this card's not worth it. But there's enough going on that I'm willing to at least consider it.
All right, let's move on to another very spicy card that has Alex written all over it. The Rotting Regisaur. 3 mana, 7/6, zombie dinosaur for 2 and a black, which has the line of text that reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card.
don't care.
Now, that's a zombie, says Modris.
Never seen that flavored text. That's so good.
Alex.
It's huge. It's really, really big, and it's also a zombie. Like, I'm obviously gonna try this in zombies, but like this card's gigantic.
You know what the best part of this card is?
that?
It says, it doesn't include the line, if you don't discard a card, sacrifice it.
Yeah, that's insane.
It just says discard a card. And you're like, I don't have any cards. And you're like, okay.
This
No
card,
Surge. It says,
yeah, you would ordinarily have this as a cost where like if you can't pitch a card, it dies. But no, you just get this ludicrously huge body for not enough mana.
Potentially on turn 2.
On one, I
one.
played like
I'm getting all sweaty thinking about doing this into a Juzam Jin. Perfect. Ancient 2 mana. Oh, you gotta love it.
right?
You
it's
gotta
a little
love
weird when you're playing Juzam Jin and your 3-drop has better stats.
it. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Jin really quickly. Which one's that?
Oh, yeah. No, we can talk about Juzam Jin for
He has
more
a-
than just quickly. It's 2 black for a 5/5. You might have difficulty looking at it because there's an accent over the Z or
there
the
he
A.
is.
There we go. Yeah, Juzam Jin. Best creature in all of Magic. 2 black for a 5/5 Jin. At the beginning of your upkeep, Juzam Jin deals 1 damage to you.
Expect my visit when the darkness
Great.
comes.
Best
The
card of all
night
time.
will
10 out of 10.
think
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Best card of all time. 10 out of 10.
He's going into some sort of fugue
No.
state.
10 out of 10.
All right. Let's
Okay.
talk about a card that I'm sure might warrant some discussion here. Let's talk about Scheming Symmetry. So 1 black mana, sorcery, choose 2 target players. Each of them searches their library for a card, shuffles their library, and puts that card on top. Anyone want to go first on this one? Because this is my first thought on this is if you are a combo deck and you are putting your win con on top of your deck and you can draw it first, is there any downside?
Jared, do you want to roast this before me or after me?
I'm talking about the
So-
best case scenario, which I think a lot of people would
So, yeah,
be
that's-
excited about this, right?
People have talked to me about this in High Tide, for Eggs, for Doomsday, because all those decks have lots of ways to draw cards built in. So like, yeah, you'll just always have a way to draw your card before your opponent and you'll be able to win. Often in Highlander, you need more than one tutor before you can just win the game, especially early on. That's negating the fact that your opponent may have a way to draw a card, and invariably they're going to be searching for a way to disrupt your combo if you are a combo deck. And just inherently, the default mode is your opponent gets their card first. So if they're also a combo deck, you just can't cast this because then you're going to
win
lose.
first, yeah.
Well,
If they're any... Like, almost every deck in Highlander has disruption or a very powerful proactive plan. So either enabling your opponent's very powerful proactive plan or enabling their disruption before you get to combo, the default mode. And in the decks I discussed earlier, High Tide, Eggs, Doomsday, that have lots of ways to draw cards, you need so much to go right. Like, in Doomsday, that means you need 2 ways to draw cards. You need a way to draw off this, cast Doomsday, and draw into your pile. So you need 4 black mana plus mana to draw a card plus mana to win. Not easy to set up. In Eggs, you are often more of a density deck. I'll let Ben, I'm sure he'll speak to this more later, but you're more of a density deck, so the odds of you just missing one piece and having everything else going for you doesn't seem that high. And in High Tide, you don't actually have that many ways to draw cards. You don't want to start off on black mana. Black mana is often hard to come by, so you really want to only play the best black cards, and this card doesn't quite make the cut for me.
I don't really have too much to add to that.
Like, even if you are in... I most certainly wouldn't play this in Eggs, and that's a deck that has about 30 to 41 mana cards that just draw a card whenever I want. If I want to draw a card with Eggs, happens. But the risk of running into whatever disruption my opponent wants, whatever my opponent needs at the time, right? I get the best card for my scenario, which is often going to be a proactive combo piece. They get the best card for whatever they have to fight.
then they get
which
it
is,
first.
Yeah, well, yes. Or it's at least available to them. And I'm a deck that plays Wheel of Fortune. I'm a deck that plays Memory Jar. It's real awkward giving it to them. But even beyond that, for like some of the more, like even Belcher and some of the most degenerate combo decks that I have played that will go as deep as like Cruel Tutor, which feels real bad. You like Vampiric Tutor? How about 3 mana at sorcery speed?
Nice.
And so, like, even in those shells, like, I just would rather have that because I know that I get to find a thing and my opponent, it's like, whatever
It's not
they're drawing.
symmetrical.
Yeah, exactly.
But look at the flavor text. One for you, one for me. What could be more fair? We're not here to
This
play
card
fair
is
magic.
incredibly fair,
Yeah.
Which is not what you want.
which is
when
the
you're doing-
issue.
Yeah. All right. Well, then let's move on
All right.
to a card that I
It
know.
looks awesome, by the way.
The
Like,
art is
Seth
really
McKinnon
good.
continues
Yeah.
to make.
That blue-orange...
All right. Sorin, Imperious?
Imperious.
Imperious Bloodlord. 3 mana, Sorin Planeswalker. Enters play with 4 loyalty, +1 ability. Target creature you control gains Death Touch. And a lifelink until end of turn. And if it's a vampire, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Another +1 ability. You may sack a vampire. When you do, Sorin deals 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life. -3, you may put a vampire creature from your hand onto the battlefield. Wheeler, tell me about vampires.
So, I've been pretty low on vampires forever. I'm willing to admit it has won a local tournament. It was a small tournament. 2 events? No way. No way. No way.
What colors?
Mardu.
Yeah.
But this deck, like, up until now, this deck there's no good reason to play it. There's
What
no
if you love
competitive
vampires?
reason. That's not it. That's never a good reason
All
to
right.
do that. Never do anything you love. No. But seriously, there isn't a legitimate reason to pick this deck from a competitive aspect over something else. But that's fine. You don't always need to go down that path. That's a cold way of viewing the game. You're probably going to hate a lot of the Magic you play if that's your mindset. But realistically, the deck struggles by not having like relevant threats unless they're backed by other cards. Sauron is at least a nice trend towards making this tribe more reasonable. It doesn't provide anything to the board without having additional cards from its -3, but it's cheap enough, the loyalty's high enough, and all these abilities are kind of busted if you have vampires in your vampires deck. If your vampires deck does not have vampires, you're doing what? Probably losing the game.
Yeah.
Thanks, team.
Yeah, the Sauron does nothing alone,
Right.
which is kind of tough. Like this.
But it's so good in the tribe.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue I had with the last Liliana, the one that was
The zombie
vampire
one?
centric.
Or wait,
or
no,
the
zombie
Yeah.
centric, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Is that even if you had zombies,
It wasn't very good.
she wasn't even that good. But if you have vampires, like this thing is gonna take over
This card
the game.
pops off.
Like
Yeah.
So, for this card and a lot of the other actually playable vampires that this set has brought us, and assuming that vampires are here, they'll continuously
Are
pump
here
them
to
out.
stay.
Vampires are here to stay. Steak.
No.
They're here.
garlic.
Yeah. I don't know. Now I'm willing to give vampires a shot.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, up next, speaking of vampires, Thirsting Bloodlord. 4 mana, 3/3 for 2 black. It's a vampire. And it says, other vampires you control get +1/+1. This is what we've come down to, 4 mana lords. Alex, what do you think?
It's a 4-mana lord. In a deck that doesn't have a lot of them. I mean,
How you doing there, Wheeler?
I'm glad. Well, now I'm glad that I'm not the only one that's brought up cards from the Planeswalker decks to be discussed. This is from one of the Planeswalker decks.
Ah.
still, I mean, you probably play this anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like.
Until a better 4-drop gets printed, this will probably be a shoe-in to the vampire.
Well, instead of 4 drops, how about we talk about 1 drops then, like the Vampire of the Dire Moon. So 1 mana 1/1 with Death Touch and Lifelink. Like, is this playable in the Vampire deck?
Get it in. It's a 1-drop. I don't care what the text is.
Well, I mean, the
Okay,
text.
I do, but
This text is super relevant.
You do care, but this text is good.
Yeah.
I still don't think this card is amazing, but
No.
in certain matchups it'll do
maybe
good things.
it's just
That-
because I'm used to like trawling the like feculent depths of card quality, just like
Feculent. What a word.
scrabbling
Wow.
for like.
Please,
some-
I need
it's
another
like,
1 drop, sir. Please.
You're playable, right? It'll be okay.
Like, I mean, that's what you have to do for these. Oh God, lesser tribes.
Ouch!
And where it's just like you have to go to these cards that like you don't have goblin guides, you don't have goblin lackeys. You got to do what you got to do.
Instead you have Vampires
And so
of the Dire Moon.
anytime you get a 1-drop with 2 relevant abilities,
Yeah,
sure, I'll play it.
fine.
All right.
She looks cool too.
Let's
great
talk
art.
about demons instead. Let's talk about Villus Bork of Blood.
Oh my god.
Boof. 8 mana, 8/8 demon, has flying but no trample.
Serge is broker of blood. Just
I know,
okay.
but dogs Bork. For a black and pay 2 life,
Dogs?
target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and whenever you lose life for any reason, draw that many cards. Jerry, you like Reanimator? Tell me about this one on the scale of reanimatable demons.
So the biggest upside for me, and the only reason I think this might see play in Reanimator, is that if you cast either Death or Reanimate with this, you just draw 8 immediately because of how those cards are templated. You put the
Yeah.
card into play, then you lose the life,
Oh, I see.
which is pretty appealing. Just like pay 8 life, draw 8 cards, get an 8/8 flyer. That's something I'm in the market for.
I got a dumb question.
Yeah.
You draw 2 cards off the activated ability,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah, but it's
Yes.
because it says draw that many cards, as opposed to whenever you lose life as an event and you group it all together.
That being said, something you really want from Reanimator is your cards to be applicable through a wide variety of matchups, and this card is not good against aggressive decks.
No.
Holy cow, is it bad. It just doesn't stabilize you at all. It doesn't have any way to protect itself. It dies to any hard removal spell. And so usually in Reanimator, you want a creature to be able to win the game by itself, you want it to have some sort of protection ability, like, or some way to stop you from dying. And this has one of those.
The three, yeah.
And so it's probably not good enough, but maybe the upside with Reanimate and Death is close
This
enough.
card at least makes Necropotence playable, so that's something to consider.
Whoa!
Savage.
Youchie.
All right, let's talk about our last black card today, Yarok's Fenlurker. 2 mana, 1/1 horror for black. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent exiles a card from their hand, and Fortuna Black gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Jer, what do you think? Actually, I want to hear Jer and Alex's thought on this.
He's cute.
This is way better than Burglar Rat.
Hold your tongue.
Yeah, just the ability to get bigger late game. Exile is much better than discard, and sort of takes away the potential for your opponent to actually gain an advantage from what should be a detrimental ability. Like, you can safely play this in any matchup, whereas if you're playing Burglar Rat against a graveyard-centric deck like Reanimator, for example, you just often don't want to cast it because you don't want to give them a free discard outlet. The fact that this goes into exile is rarely going to come up unless you're playing against Food Chain, and that'll only happen if you're playing against me. So
Yeah, what do you think, Alex?
I mean, I'm gonna try it. It's tough, right? Because like the 2-drop slot has some really crazy potent cards in it, but the ones that like have discard are like not as great as you might think. Because like the top of the pile is now Kitesail Freebooter. And then from there, it's like...
Well, a lot of the really good creatures, you get to look at your opponent's hand and take the card of your choosing.
Well, even just like for 2 mana, you get a creature that's like usually about 3 power or like does something stupid. Is
Yeah.
what I'm getting at.
like, but the ones where you get to look at their hand and choose something, you often don't get it forever. You just get it until the creature,
Right.
while the creature stays
Yeah,
around.
so it's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to red then. Let's talk about the Cavalier of Flame. 5 mana, 6/5 for 2 and a red and a red and a red. Has a very interesting ability. For 1 and red, all creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. So it's team fire breathing. When it enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. And when it dies, it deals X damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of lands in your graveyard. Wheeler, what do you think of this card?
So I've been sitting on this card for a while now, and initially I was under the impression that this might just be a bit too slow for like medium red,
Sure.
or for the like a red-green lands deck or whatever, like, but mostly medium red. But the more I've looked at it, it has a lot of words on it.
Yeah.
And I think it has enough words that I'm like, no, this card's fine. This card's good. Trips Red is not the hardest on turn 5 when you're in a monocolor deck. It will be a bit awkward, but honestly, I'm starting to think medium red's playing too many colorless sources anyways. The giving everything haste, you will find yourself where you're like, well, I got 7 mana. What do I do? Oh, I'll play this, smash for 7, draw more cards or whatnot. Being able to just kind of slam this and then cash in your excess land that the deck does run into issues with.
or even just irrelevant threats, like you can sandbag like late, like say you drew Mana Crypt the turn before, you don't need more mana, you can ditch the Mana Crypt for maybe a relevant card.
Not feeling Flame Slash, just get rid of it. And then dealing X damage to each opponent and Planeswalker when it dies. Even if X is probably just going to be 2 or 3, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Totally fine. So I'm pretty high on this card for that.
The other nice thing about each is it doesn't target, which is relevant to a couple of abilities now. I mean, when we talked about that Cerulean Drake, can't counter this ability.
Yes. But I'm actually curious about this in like a red-green, like the red-green lands like ramp deck. I think this is pretty good. I don't have a lot of experience with it.
I think it's good. I've played both red-green lands and red-green ramp.
But like this card,
Just
like
treating this as a threat that they're going to have a hard time killing.
And you can potentially just win the game.
make a bunch of plant tokens, give them all haste. Boom. Discard your life from the loan, draw your life.
Right. Cool.
World Shaper.
All right, let's move on to one of the many Chandras in this set. We have Acolyte of Flame. 3 mana Chandra for 1 and a red. Enters play with 4 loyalty. 0. Put a loyalty counter on each red planeswalker you control. 0. Create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. They gain haste. Sack them at the end of your end step. And -2. You may cast target instant or sorcery card with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard. If it would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. Wheeler, what do you think?
So I'm less enthused on this after I properly read the third ability, that it doesn't just cast it for free, but that would be a little gross. But even then, I'm still just fine with this as a 3-drop planeswalker that can just start making tokens to smash in, either like for medium red and potentially just mono red, going back to the roots of being more creature focused with Hell Riders, Hero Blade Holds, whatever it may be. Putting bodies on the table that you can then skull clamp, you can use to reckless abandon, being able to just sit here and poke at them slowly. And then also just rebuying if you do need to rebuy a Flame Slash, a Scred, or whatever it may be. You can do that. The first ability, not sure how often I'm going to be activating that with this card, but 3 mana Planeswalker that does something in the color that color wants.
Sure.
It's hard to disagree with that.
All right, let's talk about the other Chandra then. Awakened Inferno. 6 mana Chandra, enters play with 6 loyalty, has a very interesting line of text. This spell can't be countered. +2, each opponent gains an emblem. At the beginning of your upkeep, this emblem deals 1 damage to you. -3, Chandra deals 3 damage to each non-elemental creature. And -X, Chandra deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker. If it's dealt damage this way and would die, exile it instead. Jer.
I'm going to lose to this a lot. My opponent's going to play it. I'm going to look down at my handful of counter spells. Go, yep, that resolves. They're going to +2. I'm like, it goes to 8 loyalty. They're like, yep. They're going to go to my upkeep. I'm going to take 1. And I'm like, I already can't win. I'm not going to be able to remove it because it's at 8 loyalty. They're going to uptick again. I'm like, it's at 10 loyalty. They're like, yep. How do you beat this card? I don't understand. It goes to so much loyalty. You don't even need to Wrath.
I am so happy this card exists. Not even just for blue-white, but just the amount of sour Time Vault players. Like, yes.
Yeah. Infinite turns.
Oh, I love it. Oh, anything that ranches Time Vault players.
Does this end up pointed?
No.
No.
It costs 6.
It's
Yeah.
too fair.
But it's gonna kill me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought they were moving away from uninteractable emblems.
I thought they were. Why are they printing a bunch of cards with can't be countered on them?
I'm
kind
kind
of
of
want to know.
Do you want
Trying to keep a good blue mage down.
All right, let's move on to our next card. We're talking about Flame Sweep. 3 mana instant for 2 and a red. Deals 2 damage to each creature except for creatures you control with flying. Jer, what do you think about this one?
I actually think this card's pretty good. It's an instant, and it leaves around some of the threats you're likely to play. I'm imagining playing this in a blue deck, and so it's a nice cheap sweeper at instant speed that doesn't kill your Vendilion Cliques, your Nimble Obstructionists, so on and so forth. So I just thought it was a nice card to pick up, as opposed to something like Fiery Cannonade that you might be playing in its place, or Volcanic Fallout if you're a little more old school.
I've played similar effects in Workshop Weenie. What's the pyroclasm?
Whip Flare.
Whip Flare. Yeah, playing Whip Flare, which is 2 damage to each non-artifact creature.
Yeah.
And similar idea to just be like, well, this is going to suck for one of us, and I'm not one of them.
Well, yeah, and something I've started playing a lot in Tempo is Rough Tumble, because the rough side of Rough Tumble, which is almost what this is, often kills a bunch of your opponent's creatures and kills basically none of your creatures. So this is just another like almost one-sided wrath for those types of decks as well.
All right, let's talk about a new card. This is a fun effect. Glint Horn Buccaneer. 3 mana, 2/4 for 1 a red and a red. Has haste. Whenever you discard a card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And for 2 and discard a card, 1 and a red, draw a card, activate it only while it's attacking. Alex, what do you think about this card?
I feel like there's something really busted I'm missing on this.
I mean, it loves Wheel of Fortunes.
That's pretty stupid.
Do you know what else it likes?
What?
Cycling.
Dear
Okay.
God, no.
Yeah.
Is this finally a win con for Tour de France?
I don't actually.
I thought the win
think
con
so.
was having Soul Ring and Library in your opening.
And Demonic Tutor.
And Demonic Tutor. Jesus Christ.
But I'm not even sure. Like, you're probably supposed to play it, but I'm not sure it's actually good because you're just not doing anything till like turn 5. And if your opponent can't remove a single creature before turn 5, like,
I can't figure out what deck this goes in.
Do you-
Because- like, it's-
Moulin Rouge. Medium red.
I was going
okay.
to say, yeah, does Medium Red play this as a way to cycle dead cards later?
Well, that deck has so much cycling now. Like Faithless Looting, Seasoned Pyromancer.
Okay.
That big Flaming Knight that we just talked about.
Cavalier.
Cavalier.
I was going to say that makes it really strangely out of place in red for toughness.
Yeah, I don't know why
More
this
help.
is a 2/4.
Why is it a
Yeah, what
I mean, it's a Minotaur.
it's got so much armor.
Well, it's a Minotaur, so it's probably had to be a 2/3, and they're like, no. This is for 2020. 2/4s. 2/4s. And so it makes combat really awkward, right? Especially for a red deck. You attack, and it says while it's attacking, right? So you attack, they make their blocks, and then you can either just kill their thing with a shock, and your thing's never going to die because it's a 2/4 for some reason, or you're just like, I'll draw a bunch of cards and pay you. This card's great.
Yeah.
I really like this card. Really like this card.
Cool. All right, next up we have Infuriate, which is a 1 mana instant for red. Target creature gets +3/+2 until end of turn. Wheeler.
It's a slightly worse brute force, but
Yeah.
it has +3, and that other ability isn't +1. It's +2. I like it.
What are you playing it in?
Decks that play brute force, decks that play Titan strength.
Yeah. And finally, the last card that we're going to talk about today, we have Scorch Spitter. 1 mana, 1/1 elemental lizard. Whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker it's attacking. Now that's relevant. You can only do 1 damage to the planeswalker if it's attacking that planeswalker. You can't attack the player and then playing the planeswalker. Wheeler, what do you think of this card?
Oh, it's a cute little lizard that also can attack for 2. It makes I'm not entirely sold on this, but I have been thinking about this for the very low curve red, like 25 land red, where you're just looking to play as many 1-drops as possible, every shock, whatnot, because it just pushes through damage. That's kind of all you need. At this point, there are better, like you're probably just better off moving this for a different 2.
Like, this is
Or
a
Infuriate.
Rung, this is a rung below Jackal Pup, surely.
Yeah, most certainly.
Okay,
but like
just so we're
not
on the same page.
I don't think it's that much
But
lower.
but like comparatively to black 1-drops, this is like a slam dunk.
yeah,
black
which is
1-drop.
I didn't want to go there.
The flavor text is very good. Yes, she can be a nuisance, but at least my tea never gets
What a
cold.
cute little lizard.
It smells like sulfur.
Well, friends, that's going to be where we call it today. Reminder, if there's any cards that you think we've missed on the 4 colors that we covered, let us know down below in the comments, and we'll take a peek. And when we record part 2 of our set review, we'll have an opportunity to look at some of that fun stuff there. But now we move on to our closing segment, Powerful Magic. And up today we have Alex, question mark? Up today we have me. Yeah?
I mean, I was just going to say, like, I got... He keeps flashing it.
You want to tell that story? I thought that was kind of cool.
I can tell the
Stalling for time.
Yeah. give it that story. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, it was just me getting ranched. I was
go
playing, weirdly, the mirror in Reanimator. at YJ because I have this deck that I put together that I'm hoping to try out. It's red black. I keep trying to come up with a clever name for it, like
Gristlemud.
Gristlemud.
Gristlemud is at least what the name of similar archetypes
I was
from other
gonna call
formats.
it Trash Fire, or maybe like
Go
I
on.
don't know, something like that. It's
Somebody mentioned trash.
You want to know how I got this trash? It's red black artifact based reanimator. Basically, they printed Goblin Engineer.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a card that does a pretty great impersonation of Entomb.
Yeah.
So I just leave that up, and I was playing against Grixis, like more traditional reanimator. And I think I may have actually put this guy into play using Engineer. I got Platinum Imperium in play.
Boo.
And
Sorry, what does that card do?
well, it's an 8/8 for 8,
Big,
and your life
thick.
total can't change. Interestingly, if you put this into play off of Reanimate, you'd lose no life. But that
So you're in a good shape. You got a Platinum Imperior.
yeah, and then my opponent reveals a weakness to my deck that I hadn't thought about. He's the greatest thief in the multiverse. He just very confidently, places down Dak Faden, and I'm like, right, that guy.
Give me that.
That-
Give me that.
Quite good.
That guy.
You reanimated this?
So
I reanimated
this. It was literally like that. So I now need to consider this as an occupational hazard, because he's very good against a deck whose all their threats are big artifact donkeys. Oh, Dak Faden.
I think it's appropriate too that Dak Faden has found a home in a reanimator deck.
Yeah, he's
Wow.
wow. Too soon. That is too soon.
I don't know.
I also have a good time imagining like the graphic like FF6 style, where like he walks across the screen, like puts out his red like pixel hand, and the entire like sprite of the Titan comes with him as he walks away with it. Like, oh.
All right, friends. Well, that's going to be it for our episode today. Look forward to part 2 of our set review coming out next week. Also, for things to look forward to, the Highlander Summer League is going to be starting soon. I know a lot of people are pretty excited about the last one, and we're working on something pretty spicy. So stay tuned for that over at the Twitch channel at twitch.tv/LoadingReadyRun. Reminder that North 100 is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. See you later.